Before I start telling this story, I have to say that this happened over 3.5 years when I was between the ages of 15 and 18. All of the people in this story have had their names changed, for privacy reasons. I grew up in a pretty good-sized town. High school grades always had between 800 and about 1,000 students. The town was about 45 minutes to an hour from the second biggest city in the state, which is known for 3 rivers and its many bridges. I have 2 older brothers, which means obviously I am the youngest of 3 boys. Our mother was the general manager at the family's golf course. By no means were we well off in any way, but we were also far from poor. Our father was in the state police, a lieutenant at the time of everything happening. Cop Dad was very hard on us when needed, but we all 3 learned to always be respectful no matter what, unless extreme situations called for otherwise. I will say that due to a very dark history, I've never had a particularly close relationship at all with my brothers or my parents. Even with all of that though, I'll admit that this experience made my dad and I be slightly closer, even for very short time periods. We only had one thing in common, that we'd each protect the ones we love at all costs, even if it meant our lives. Him with my mom, family, and I with my girlfriend, nieces, and nephew. When I was just 15, I was downtown getting food and ice cream with friends, at a place about a half a mile from the high school football stadium. Being that we were only 15 years old, going into our 10th grade year of high school, and just about to turn 16, we all rode our bikes to meet up. When we came back outside to leave to do something else though, I realized that my bike was missing. As soon as the group and I checked the immediate area, I called my dad, knowing that he was home from work. He flew down to where I was. Home was only about 3 miles away from where I was at after all. We all figured he'd be extremely pissed at us, but luckily he wasn't. All of my friends got on their bikes to go off in different directions towards their own homes, and to go help look for my bike. As my dad and I were driving towards the part of town we lived in, we saw a group of 3 people, 2 males and 1 female, walking down a side street towards the main street we were on, about 1.5 miles from the restaurant. The group was pushing my bike as they walked, causing me to snap to attention and yell loudly, "Hey, they have my bike!" My dad stopped immediately and put the car in park in the street. We jumped out and I laughed inside, due to seeing my dad go from usual to being, well, cop dad. He had the girl and 1 guy stand at the wall with their faces touching it. He slammed the guy with the bike to the ground. I grabbed the bike and put it in the bed of my truck. Since it was only 2 of us against 3, my dad told me, "Get in the truck so they don't see your face." I told him, no way. It wasn't until years later that I came to regret that. The cops came and arrested all 3 of them. Fast forward 2.5 years later. I was 18 years old and home from my freshman year of college, which was spent at a military college across the state from home. I was out jogging around 6 p.m. one night on the sidewalk next to the old road when a car flew past me, sat at the stop sign at the top of the hill, and waited until I passed them. The stop sign, I should say, is directly in front of my house. Luckily, I was home right then and memorized the car's details, or as much as I could. I wrote down what I remembered. Green 2003 Toyota Camry that was very beat up. The vehicle drove but went a lot slower. I walked into the house as they were passing. I didn't think anything wrong with the situation, other than someone driving fast and slowing down upon realizing someone was jogging in the road. Fast forward 1 week though. I just finished up another jog, walked into the house through the front door, which leads right into the kitchen. It has a big window that looks out to the driveway, front yard, the street, and the stop sign the car had stopped at 1 week before. As soon as I walked to the sink by the window to splash some cold water on my face, I suddenly heard a loud boom from outside, sounding like an M80 exploding, then 1 second of silence. 3 loud booms in quick succession, which, thanks to me being a hunter, I immediately recognized as gunfire. I dropped down, crawled to the door, grabbed the baseball bat my brothers and I used before, and ran out the door, even though I knew I had only a bat and 0 chance of winning against a firearm. I was hoping that I'd surprise them somehow, and they'd think I'd gone crazy, or that I had nothing to lose. When I got outside, they were standing in the driveway. I recognized that same vehicle from a week earlier that sat at the stop sign when I was out jogging. Thankfully, no one was home except me at the time, because who knows where they would have been standing. After the police came and I had given my statement, we waited. Since the town was big for a town, it was also small enough that a lot of people knew who others were. The town's police, my brothers, all joked with me, asking things like, "Did you try being a hero when no one was around?" Or would ask if I was crazy due to running outside towards gunfire without a gun. Well, 2 or 3 days had passed when we had received the call from the cops saying they'd caught the man who shot up the house. It turns out it was the exact same guy who'd stolen my bike 2.5 years earlier. After finding that out, my dad and I looked at each other without saying anything. We didn't tell my mom about it being the same guy. The guy received 10 years for attempted murder with a weapon, attempted assault, but due to not a single person being injured in any way, no assault charges of any kind were charged towards him. The man was able to get a gun from his friend who worked at the county courthouse due to stealing it from the judge's office desk. We tried to go on with our lives. I became an EMT during college, working on weekends, then finished school. When I was about 26 years old, I had stopped by my parents' house when I was in the area. I walked into the kitchen, and on the kitchen table was the town's newspaper. It had the front page reading something along the lines of, "Local woman missing, vehicle found abandoned and burned." As I started reading the article for a second, I almost immediately ripped the kitchen table off the frame in rage. The article said that the missing woman's boyfriend for some period of time was the same man who had stolen my bike and shot my parents' house with me in the front window. He wasn't arrested or charged with any crime relating to the missing woman at the time. I left and went back to my apartment an hour away. I made sure I was always carrying a pistol, except when I was working in the ambulance, of course. Even through all of the rage I was feeling, somewhat paranoid thoughts of him still following me crept through my mind, even if it was completely unlikely. My parents left their house for a week to stay at my grandpa's house. Life went on from there. I still work as an EMT in the second biggest city in my state, and enjoy every second I spend with my girlfriend and the ever-growing group of nieces and nephews who call me their goofy bearded funkle. The guy is who knows where, but I'm glad he's not doing anything to harm me, or even worse, my girlfriend, or someone in my small group of people who I love. This story happened to me a few weeks ago. It was early October, and my sister and I were in the kitchen, me doing my homework and my sister making some lunch for our dad for tomorrow. If you're asking why, well, it's not really anyone's business, but my mom is pregnant and she's still in her early stages, and she can't really get up to do a lot of stuff right now. Well, everyone was asleep, and it was about 1 to 12 in the morning. We had decided, since the day was being pretty shit, we would go and roll up. Well, you know what I mean. We had everything ready to go, and trying our best to sneak out through the back door into the backyard as silent as possible. The night was one of those nights the moon's light is bright enough for you to make out things in front of you, kind of clear enough to know what it is. We were by our trampoline, sitting on top of it, which is important, trust me. I was sitting in a chair, and my sister in one of those cars for infants. We were chilling, and I was looking up at the moon. My sister was trying to look at what I was looking at, because she's kind of blind. We started talking about random shit, going on about the world. But then, I suddenly heard some steps from nearby. Not normal animal steps, but heavy footsteps. I don't know, I might sound kinda crazy, but I could hear it just on the other side of the fence. Since the fence was made out of wood, I couldn't see through to what was on the other side. I looked at her, and with my eyes pointed at the direction of the sound was coming from. She just nodded her head to show that she had heard it too. We shook it off. We were high off our asses after all. We just kept on hitting it, until a few moments later, we heard the sound again, but this time, it was getting closer to the fence. I was kind of getting freaked out now. I looked at my sister, and she was just frozen there. I knew it was real now, and the adrenaline made me sober up. I knew if we stayed there, something bad was probably going to happen. Call me crazy, but I had a feeling in my gut, and knew we just had to get the fuck away from there. We couldn't go inside yet, because we had to wait for the hair thing to turn on to make noise, so we just got closer to the house, and waited by the car. Suddenly, the light on the other side of the neighborhood turned on, and I could make out something black walking by. Then, we heard a lady screaming. What the fuck? I was so confused. I looked over at my sister. We could hear the thing moving again, but this time, it was moving towards an abandoned house on the other side of the neighborhood. And that's when my sister and I said, fuck it. We went inside even though that thing wasn't on yet. Once we were inside, we locked the door, and I immediately went up to my room. I was inside my closet, and she was taking her shoes off outside my room. I asked her something, and she had just come in and was about to close the door when there was a bang on our back door. Someone, or something, had been knocking on our door so hard we could feel trembling in our feet. Now I was beyond scared. I immediately jumped into my bed like a 5-year-old kid. I thought my sister was doing the same thing. I grabbed her phone and pointed the light towards her direction, but she was still frozen there. I grabbed her hand so I could pull her into the bed. We were laying there in bed, not knowing who or what was lurking outside our house and why they were trying to get in. I was surprised my parents hadn't heard anything, but also realized they mustn't have, or else they would go and investigate right away. The noise stopped rather suddenly, before we heard our neighbor's dog barking. It was slowly barking towards the backyard fence once again, before stopping altogether a few moments later. Whatever creepy thing or person was lurking in my backyard, let's not meet. At the time, I was 22, and I had just lost my job. In order to pay my bills, I picked up a job working for a friend of mine who needed a process server to serve papers for foreclosures. While I had never done it before, the money was fairly good, and it was something to hold me over until I could find something a bit more permanent. Most of the time, the hardest part of the job was finding the people who I needed to serve the papers when they were home. While I had heard that the job could be quite dangerous, other than an old man threatening that he was going to beat me up, and the occasional dog, I was never really in any dangerous or ominous situations. Typically, it would just be that people would ignore the door, or even deny being who I was looking for. That was the worst I ever had to deal with. I would often only serve papers during the day, because both my girlfriend and my mother would get quite concerned when I would go out at night. There was this one house, though, that after several attempts during the day, I decided I was going to try at night this time. This house was in a wooded area, and had a long dirt driveway up a hill. During the day, it didn't seem really scary at all. It seemed like a nice house, actually. But at night, it was transformed into pitch black and silence, which only made it that much more creepy. As I pulled up to the house, I saw a car parked up at the top of the driveway, which was about 20 feet from the house itself. I could see a few lights on inside. I thought to myself, awesome, someone is finally here. I'll do this real quick and easy and be right on my way. I got out of the car and walked up onto the porch. There were no lights on lighting up the porch, but the lights on inside, so it was completely black. I knocked on the door and rang the bell, and waited for a while, but no one would come to the door. I rang the bell again. Suddenly, a light in the kitchen at the end of the hall that led to the front door went off. Still, no one came. I knocked a little harder, but still no one came to the door. Just about ready to give up, I started to walk back to my car, when suddenly, the porch light turned on. I turned around and went back to the porch, but as soon as I put my foot on the first step, the light went out again. I looked around, thinking someone must be watching me and playing a prank or something, but I couldn't see anyone. I knocked again, but again, no one came to the door. I tried looking through the windows. The house seemed to look like a hoarder lived there, but there was no sign of it actually being lived in. Again, I knocked, rang, and waited, but still, nobody came. I decided I was just about done with this scary situation, and I was just going to leave. I was reaching for my door handle, when again the light on the porch turned on. This time, I looked into the window in the house. I could see half of a person standing near the window and watching me. I walked quickly up to the door, hoping to get there before they could leave and pretend they weren't there. This time, though, the light stayed on as I stepped onto the porch. I walked up to the door, rang the bell, but the person I had seen was now nowhere to be found. Suddenly, to my right, a man appeared from beyond the corner of the house. He scared the crap out of me. I started walking backwards, only to suddenly hear footsteps coming from behind me. A girl walked around from the other corner. "Hi, can I help you?" I told him I had papers to serve the owner. He told me that would be his parents. I asked if he lived there. He was giving me a weird vibe, but he said yes, so I gave him the papers and quickly walked back to my car. When I looked back at the house, both of them were now standing on the porch, staring silently at me. While this was creepy and scared the crap out of me, it wasn't until the next day, when I handed in my affidavit for it, that I found out the owner had died long ago, and nobody was supposed to be living there. They still needed 3 attempts before they could file the paperwork, which is why they had sent me. I didn't serve at night anymore after that, nor did I ever tell my mother or girlfriend. A little background. I'm a visually impaired female college student, and it was the last day of September of 2015 when this event happened. It was way before I started taking Uber to get to school. Being visually impaired, I have to be very aware of my surroundings because I've encountered many situations with people who made me very uncomfortable. Some people had good intentions, I guess, but there were quite a number of people who were completely ignorant of an entirely different reality from what they're used to. Anyway, I used to take this bus service where I live called Link, which provided transportation for people with disabilities. I've had my fair share of issues with them, but those stories are for another time. Anyway, I was waiting inside the humanities building at my community college. I had a lot of time to wait for the bus to come. It was around 4 p.m., and I usually liked to hang out in that building whenever I didn't have anything else to do. I was just on my phone, checking my social media. I'm minding my own business, when a woman comes into the building, speaking Spanish in a loud voice. I didn't pay her much attention at first. I figured, of course, that she was talking to someone else. After all, I wasn't the only one in the building, and she could have easily been talking on the phone. There's also the little fact that I don't even speak Spanish. I mean, I know the basic words that everyone knows, but that's about it. The woman edged closer to me though, still speaking Spanish. The edginess of her voice immediately caught my attention. She had a sharp, no-nonsense tone, which scared me a little. That's when I realized she was talking to me. I told the woman I couldn't understand her, but obviously she didn't speak English at all. I felt a little bit helpless, but I didn't want to just ignore the woman. As much as the situation unsettled me, I wasn't the type to just ignore someone. Another student came down the hall at that moment and asked if I needed help, which I did. I asked her if she spoke Spanish and explained the situation to her, and she spoke to the lady for me. The student who spoke English told me that the lady had said that my bus had arrived to pick me up. I told her to tell the woman that my bus surely wasn't coming yet. The time frame was between 5 and 5:30. She explained this to the woman, who again insisted that it was my bus. The entire situation was starting to get on my nerves. I've dealt with so many people who have made me feel unsettled, but I felt a sense of dread during this situation, like there was a real danger. That's when I did something I regretted later on. I walked outside. Thankfully though, I was smart enough to stay within sight and not walk all the way out to where the bus was. I was still close by the building. Let me pause for a second to explain something. I wasn't the only disabled student at my school, let alone the only one who took the bus, so the situation was incredibly suspicious to me. For some reason, I could just sense something in the air, and I felt immediately creeped out as I stood there on the path. My senses were on high alert. After minutes of this feeling, I finally had enough. I called dispatch for the bus to ask if my bus had somehow shown up an hour early, which had been known to happen every once in a blue moon. The dispatcher told me my bus wasn't supposed to arrive anytime soon, that another one was picking up someone else. Relieved, I hung up, went back inside, and told the student to explain to the woman that the bus was there to pick up another student, not me. The lady stubbornly persisted it was for me though. I decided to extricate myself from the situation, thanked the other student for help, and headed off to the bathroom. What was the woman's motive? What was the feeling I had? What would have happened if I had gone closer to the parking lot? That woman was just so persistent. Maybe she meant well and was really trying to help me. Maybe she'd seen me before. But that didn't explain the creepy feeling I got from her. Not to mention that weird atmosphere I had when I walked outside. I had never ever seen her before that day, so naturally this situation scared me. I was somewhat familiar with the usual college students that hung around the area at that particular time, smoking and talking to one another, even though I made the mistake of going outside and calling the dispatch, and not calling them from where I was sitting. I'm lucky that nothing happened to me. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any criticisms on how I can make the videos better, or any thoughts about it in general, please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. As well, in the description below the video, there will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, Twitter, and Twitch accounts. If you guys want to chat, please be sure to send me a message on any of those. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be forewarned though that I tend to go on Facebook less than the others, so it may take me a little bit longer to respond to you. If you want to send in a story, or you have a story that you'd like to be read, and please be sure to take a look at the description and send me a message on any one of those sites. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one as well, and how you would like to be credited in the video the story appears in, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. And please be sure to include as much detail as you are comfortable with, and make sure to follow proper grammar at least a little bit. That way it will be easier for me to read, and it will also be long enough to put into a video. If you guys are curious about the music used in the video, it's always listed in the description in the order which it appears, and I have links to the artists as well. I usually use Devlato Studios and Miyuji, so that's usually what you're going to find there. If you're curious about the art in the video, my art guy Alan always does all of my art for the channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I have links to all of his social media as well, so if you like his stuff, be sure to check him out. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure, so if you like it, you can definitely get some good quality products from him. I don't think there's too much new updates today, other than the fact that I'm very excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out, and I just ordered Pikmin 3 on the Switch, so hopefully that gets here soon. I've been waiting like 3 years for that because nobody bought a Wii U. So, yeah, that's my news for now. Be sure to let me know how you guys are doing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.